Welcome to the Homefront Podcast, hosted by me, Becca Bookman. The Homefront Podcast aims to introduce you to the people, initiatives, and ideas shaping Israeli society from within. Since October 7th, Israel's civil society has rallied. Grassroots movements, volunteering, everyday people helping out, it's all become part of the fabric of life here in Israel. On today's episode, we have Rivkie Telsner, CEO of All Things Israel. Rivkie has been volunteering non-stop since the start of the war. Our conversation will focus on her personal experiences and everything she's learned about volunteering during wartime. Rivkie, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Becca. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Here at the Homefront Podcast, we start all our episodes by asking our guests, how is your Zionism doing today?
I never really actually looked at myself as a Zionist. It wasn't really, that's not how I grew up with Israel. It was just about Eretz Israel. It wasn't really specifically about Zionism. But I think that through this whole situation, I feel like it brought me together with everybody else. I feel like the whole Zionism idea took on a whole new meaning. It's not the Zionism that I read about, or it's not the Zionism that I heard about. It was the Zionism of the love of Jews and the love of Israel, and everybody just wanting to do what was best for the Jews and the land of Israel.
You've really been putting yourself out there for the love of the people, the love of the land, the love of the country.
Yeah.
So let's kick off our conversation today, going back to the beginning of the war. What was your experience like in those early days, especially as somebody who started volunteering then?
It was a little bit of fog. It was like, what's going on? What's happening? I'm not a big television or radio listener, so I didn't really know exactly what was going on. But there was all of a sudden this very, very strong, I'm not sure what the word is, but all of a sudden everybody was looking for something to do. It was like, I can't just sit in my house and cry and think about this. And all of a sudden people were just doing. And it was like, oh, okay, what can I do? I can't go to war. I can't, And then slowly, people just started talking like, oh, I'm doing this. Oh, I'm doing this. Oh, I'm doing this. And then it just snowballed. And it was just calling your friends and being like, are you doing something tomorrow? Are you doing something tomorrow? Oh, they're having a bus to go to the south. Oh, they're going to pick tomatoes. Oh, they need help with the laundry in the hotels. Oh, and it just created this whole life of its own, really.
I think that's such a key that those early months, it was just a life of its own.
Yeah.
Its own beast almost.
Yeah.
You mentioned all these different little activities that you found. Can you tell us a little bit more about these volunteering opportunities, especially at the beginning?
I live in the center of town and there's a lot of hotels, and all of a sudden there was just this influx of people everywhere. And you would just see people. And I remember actually saying to one of my friends, I wonder what everyone's going to do with their laundry. And I said that. And it wasn't, and then all of a sudden, literally about 3 or 4 days later, my neighbor said to me something like, oh, do you know that they're doing an initiative in the plaza if you're able to help somebody with their laundry, which is how I became involved even, and was the manager for a while of the laundry in the Leonardo Plaza.
You're talking about people who had evacuated from the south or maybe the north as well?
South.
From the south.
It was mostly southern evacuees. And they were getting stuff from the hotel, but the hotel wasn't equipped to deal with the laundry. And some wonderful, wonderful Jewish woman, I'm sure, is the one who kickstarted that idea. But I remember thinking about it. It was like, oh, they're coming here, they don't have clothing. They were bringing them clothing and things, but it was just like the basic everyday things. It's like, okay, what's going to happen now, But before that, actually, I'm not sure how it started, but my friend told me that there was a bus of students and they were going to pick tomatoes in the south. And I was like, oh, okay, let's go. And we went one day and it was unbelievable. I mean, there was kids of 10. There was a guy of 75. There were people from all over Israel. And it was literally, everyone was just the same exact idea. I'm sitting at home. I can't sit at home anymore. What can I do? And someone told them, oh, we need this, we need this, we need this. And everyone just was like, oh, I could do that. And tomato picking is actually really fun. And it was really helpful. And the Chaklaim, the guy who runs the place, Avner, was the sweetest man. And we were changing his life. And he told us that all the time. And it was just, we ended up going once, actually. We slept over and we were there for 3 days at one time.
What were those 3 days like?
It felt like we were on a ranch. We woke up, 8 o'clock in the morning. Everybody had their coffee or whatever. And then in the evening, he made us this, big, massive barbecue. And his wife would bring food all day long into the orchards, literally all day long. And his daughter would walk around with water. And it was like the chalutzim. It's like the videos or the pictures that you see of the 20s and the 30s when people came to Israel and they're like sitting on the floor and they're, really, scooping the dirt. That's what it felt like. It was also being in the ground, like Eretz Israel, like really actually helping somehow the land even itself.
When everybody was going down to go and help the farmers, it really felt like almost a return back to Israel of old.
Yeah. And at the same time, there were much more bombs than there are now when you go to the south. And you would literally be in the field and you would just hear boom, boom, boom. And then you would hear helicopters. And we know what helicopters mean. And so it was wonderful. And we were feeling this great, feeling of let's do something. And at the same time, there was always around you was wow, they're a mile away from us and they're fighting and they're getting injured. And it was never far away, that idea, which I guess even made you want to do it more. Because it's like, listen, look what they're doing. Like, I need to be able to do whatever I can do for this,
And when you're in the fields and you're hearing those bombs and you're hearing pretty much the war unfolding probably very close to where you were, are there shelters? Is there where to go? What's the feeling?
I don't think that there were shelters there. And even if there were, they were way too far for you to get to. No, he told us to just lie on the floor.
I think what's so incredible was that even though all of that was happening, that these fields were so close to where the war was unfolding, people were still going.
Yeah. I've never had a moment of fear. I've been 3 times a week for the last 6 months to the south. Not for 1 minute.
At the beginning of the war, there was a lot of people doing laundry for people who were displaced and living at hotels throughout the country. I know you were very involved with that. So can you tell us a bit more?
So I live in the center of town. We had about 6 hotels within 5 minutes of me. And there were displaced persons living at all of them. Some of them were full completely, mostly from the south. Some were from the north. And when they first came, people very much were bringing a lot of clothing. People left their houses with nothing. And so they were bringing a lot of clothing. They set up like little stores downstairs for people to come, And then about a week or 2 into that, all of a sudden it becomes, well, we can't just go buy clothes every single day. We also need to do laundry. What do we do? And some very wonderful women put together the laundry initiative, where they basically made somebody the head of the hotel. Everybody, I was the rakezet, I think it's called the manager, I'm not sure, for the Leonardo Plaza. And basically each hotel made a WhatsApp group, and the volunteers would sign up to this WhatsApp group. And 3 times a week, we would tell the people in the hotels to bring their laundry to the front desk, and clearly marked with their name and their phone number, and we would take it and we would bring it back clean. I think that I probably also got the hugs that I got from the women. Like it was like I was bringing them gold. One of them said to me, she's like, when we go home, can you come do it again also? But I think that it was just one of those things, that you're not in your regular schedule. You're not in your house. You don't have control about what's going on, and this was a little something that you could, take off of their head that they don't have to worry about.
Wow.
Yeah.
In those early days when you were finding these initiatives, what was pulling you to volunteer? Because you've become really a full-time volunteer almost, if that's fair to say. So what was pulling you, or what was your motivation for volunteering?
I love to help. I'm like, if I can help, then I'm happy to help. But it's not just that. It's also, I live in Israel. And there are boys at war, and there are people doing things. And what do you mean I'm going to sit here and do what? Like, I need to participate in this in some way. I'm part of this. They're out there. They're fighting for me, so I can't just sit at home and do nothing. And I need to be busy. I'm someone who does much better when I'm busy.
You've been telling us a lot about what you were doing. Tell us about your volunteering today.
Okay, so right now there is a lot of different units going in and out of Gaza. There's a lot of different units moving around to a lot of different places. And there are, every unit has a rasap, who's the logistical leader, and they will contact somebody that they know who somehow comes to us at some point. It's not just us. I work with a lot of different volunteer groups. I'm not specific with one. And they'll basically tell us how many soldiers they have, where they're going to be, and generally they just want to up the morale of the boys and give them, a good time. And they basically give us the information, and then we try and find sponsors to sponsor it. And then sometimes you'll need volunteers to actually come and help with it. But then there's a lot of different things that have come up. There are caterers now who do these incredible big barbecues. I mean, they will build like a barbecue for 1,200 soldiers, and in 2 hours they will have food for 1,200 people. It's unbelievable. And you have musicians who are willing to give of their time. And basically, the logistics of just putting people together. I'm on one volunteer group that they say, this is how many volunteers we need, sign up. And then the volunteers show up, and then they have all the food, and then we make everything on the spot. And we put it out nicely, and, it started out, it's funny, it started out just, pitot and salads and meat. And then all of a sudden people started making like desserts. And so you'll have like fresh cookies and fresh cakes and things like that. And then it became much more homey. And it's like, it's a whole, it's not just a barbecue. It's like a whole meal that somebody sent you. Then you also have, there's a lot of different organizations that have buses that leave every morning. And every week they'll tell you, on Sunday we need to go down to this farm, and on Monday we're going to this farm. Sometimes they'll even switch it. It'll be like, oh, on Tuesday we were going to go here, but this guy told us he really, really needs it, so we really need 15 people to go here. And there's all these WhatsApp groups. It's amazing how much information there is. You have people who said, I came for 6 weeks, I didn't know what I was going to do, and then somehow they found things to do every single day. There's just endless amounts of things that need to be done, and people are slowly actually putting them also into much more easier formats that people can just come and just find something that works for them. And sometimes there's a ride, sometimes you have to find a ride. But it's becoming much more central.
So there's farming, there's barbecues with music to lift morale of the soldiers, and you're also cooking and baking, yes?
I've baked and given out over 3,000 cookies since the beginning of the war. After the whole story with Rachel from Ofakim with the cookies, I decided that I was going to make a different cookie story for the war. I do baking in my house. Anytime I have free time, I make cookies. I make a double batch of cookies, which makes 100 cookies at a time. It takes me 2 hours. And I always like to have in my freezer. So, if somebody tells me there's a barbecue, and I just grab it and I run. Sometimes we even just hand them out like at the different, checkpoints, and it always just brings, they just smile. But then there's also, you can make food for Miluim families, for reservists. There's food that goes for Shabbat to the soldiers. There are kitchens, I think, in every major city in Israel that are constantly just cooking, either for families or sometimes also for people who are sitting Shiva. There's even volunteering to, stand in Har Herzl where there are funerals, to give out water and sandwiches. I mean, every single thing that can be done has a volunteer chat, WhatsApp, something, for any single thing that you could do. Some people don't love to go to soldiers. Some people would love to do things behind the scenes. You can literally find everything. I'm on a group where they asked also to do if somebody could do a knitting circle for some displaced persons who are a little bit older. in one of these hotels? Or can you babysit for this woman whose husband is in Miluim and she has 3 children? Or, I mean, everything, literally anything you can think of, there are volunteer positions for that.
There's a lot of talk about foreigners coming to Israel to come and volunteer. But what about locals? What are Israelis doing volunteering right now?
A lot of locals are doing farming. There are literally lists and lists and lists of farms in every part of Israel. And I think a lot of people are doing that. Even schools, I think, like they're bringing children to do stuff. I know that the students are still doing things like that. And I think that also the people on the ground have also started a lot of new initiatives. There's a lot of things that we don't know. There are, people need houses. I think that the people on the ground are much more dealing with those kind of things. Management companies are, I know one management company in Jerusalem who have like 60 apartments, and they literally gave out all 60 apartments to displaced persons to stay in. So they're working, but they're not working. It's within what they do on a regular basis, but it's actually on a voluntary basis. So I think that people are doing that. There's also, people are cooking. I went to do cooking one Thursday afternoon for Shabbos. It was all Israeli people. 2 hours, peel potatoes, peel carrots. The locals are actually part of all of it. Everywhere I go, there's always some sort of locals. We do barbecues and we have all these caterers and they're all locals. And so, they get to also be part of everything that's going on.
In all the volunteering that you've done, have you run into any challenges or hurdles?
I feel like it's just everybody putting their best foot forward. This is why I actually try and convince people that they should come. I think that it's a beautiful, beautiful time for Am Yisrael. I know it sounds strange in the scheme of things. But besides, of course, we know what the background is. But I've never seen such a, wanting to do. And every person you meet, every single person you meet who's come here from out of town just wants to do something. Literally, it's like, what can I do? What can I do? My friend told me yesterday that she has a group of soldiers in Gaza and they want to send 100 shawarmas to Gaza. And so I put it on my profile and 10 of my friends were like, oh, I'll pay for a shawarma for a soldier. It's like everybody just is saying, and then they wrote me a note saying, thanks so much for, allowing me to participate in this. And it's like, okay, it's almost everybody just wants to help and you just need the people to be able to facilitate it and put it where it needs to be.
You've shared so many different stories and so many different volunteerings that have happened. Have there been any that have really stood out? Any that have really touched you?
I believe that every person you meet, you can find some sort of connection with. And I've been to 6 spaces where I've met people that I knew. And 2 of my cookies that were sponsored by people in the States got to soldiers who were family of the people who had sponsored the cookies, which means they sent their family a photo saying, did you guys send me cookies? And then they sent it to me and they're like, how did you get to him cookies? So that for me was kind of like God's way of showing like, this really is your family, this is, it's hashgacha pratis, as they say. It's everybody's connected and you never know where you do for this one and this one will do for this one and this one will come back to you. And it's just, that's, I think, been the biggest part of this for me. Like really everybody is connected, literally connected, not just Am Yisrael, some sort of idea that we're actually all absolutely connected.
You had told me in a previous conversation that your father was here during a previous war and he had volunteered, and now you, as his daughter, are volunteering now. So can you tell us a little bit more about that?
So my father was in yeshiva here during the 6-Day War, and he told us that they used to pack sandbags, which as a little girl growing up in London, I don't think I even knew what sandbags were. I don't know what they were used for. I'm not sure why. But it was just this idea that, he packed sandbags. That was like the line. And then now, all of a sudden, it's like, what are you doing during the war? And it reminded me like, oh, my dad used to say that they packed sandbags. So now I understand what sandbags was. And well, it shows that, we're a people that when things need to be done, there are people there to do them. I don't think there's any other country in the world that has to participate in the war the way that we participate in the war. I think that the whole of Israel participates in some way with any war, whether it's supporting the soldiers or doing laundry or displaced persons. I don't think we've ever had this many displaced persons in any conflict before. I'm not sure if that's true or not, but I don't remember ever hearing, in the past wars. But I think it shows that the Jews are just, when things need to be done, they get done. And whoever you need to do them, steps up. I think it's very much, you see that in Israel. And it was then, and it's now. And I mean, I feel a little bit also like, there are some photos of us like on the ground. And I was like, one day, the way we saw the photos of the chalutzim, of the pioneers in the olden days, one day our kids are going to learn about what we did planting, the soil in the war to end all wars. It's the story of the Jewish people, I guess. Every generation has to do their bit to save it, pretty much.
All the volunteering you've been doing, you're a very busy lady with the volunteering. How have your friends and family responded to the volunteering?
Everybody wants to come along. Next time you go there, could you take me? Next time you go there, can you take me? That's number one. For Purim, I actually I worked with an organization called Chayal al Chayal, which is for lone soldiers. And they were looking for drivers to do deliveries on Pesach, for Purim, for Mishloach Manot. And I put up on my Facebook that if people would like to contribute, I would like to make $1,000 so that I can rent a car and be available to them. And I made $2,500 from that. And I don't really ask generally for money. I'm not somebody who asks for money, but all my friends and everyone was just like, oh, please, yes, can we? And so, yeah, it was enough for a car. It was enough for barbecue. It was enough. The week before, I was able to send 100 meals for soldiers for Shabbat before that somebody asked. Everybody wants to help. Let me know when you go. Let me know when you go. Let me know when you go. That's what I've gotten from everyone.
That's special.
Yeah.
With all the volunteering that you've been doing, what's been the most impactful on you?
Each time the soldiers look at me and ask me why, I don't understand. It's almost like, what do you mean? You do this, we do for you. This is how it works. And they just seem like you'll go to a base and there'll be, let's say, 200 soldiers. And literally 70% of them on their way out, they'll come by and they'll stop to come and thank you. They come by, they're leaving and they're like, thank you so much. And sometimes I've actually done nothing. Because there are volunteers that I do that I actually work on the grill and I cut the salad and I put out the pita. But there are some places that I come to, I always say, I work with a bunch of men and I always tell them that they're not going to go and hug the women. And so you need to put a spot in your car so that I can come with you so that I can hug the women. And sometimes I do that. So I haven't really done anything specifically. I'm just coming there. And yet the soldiers are all like, what do you mean? You could have stayed home and watched TV. You could have gone shopping. You could have gone to the restaurant. You could have, And they're always so surprised that, why? Just go on with your life. You don't have to worry about this. And every time, I always look at them with, wonder. What do you mean? You're our soldiers. You're doing what we can't do, but for us, that every time. I don't understand how they don't understand why we do what we do, because of what they do.
How do you see this movement of volunteering that's been really developing over the last few months? How is it changing Israel?
Well, it's bringing people together, I think. We had a lot of division, and there's a lot of division, but I think that this is like a grassroots effort to counteract the division. And it really is, because it's all different types of people. It's religious people, not religious people, atheists. I mean, we've met every kind of people. And I think when there's a common goal and you can forget about everything else that's happening, I think it brings a unity to the people, and that's all I've seen. You know, that all types. I mean, we don't talk politics. That's number one. So nobody talks politics when you're volunteering. But I think it's definitely bringing people together. I think it's people realizing that if we don't have each other, then we don't have anything. That we can't do anything on our own. That in order for them to do this, we need to be doing this, and we need to be doing this. And I think, like in the political world, where there's a lot of noise, we can't really even attempt to figure out what's going on over there. But this is something that we can do. And this is something that we're good at. And this is something that brings joy to people. And this is something that brings people together. And I think that that's what's going to be from this. It's a very much, it's meeting the soldier that saved you. And there's all these new communities forming and all these different partnerships, and everybody just... So I think it's bringing, it's making a unity out of something else. It's creating a unity through this that maybe wouldn't have happened some other way.
What I love about when you use the word unity is I've heard so many people use that word. It's almost like it's palpable.
That's why also I say people have to come to Israel. Anybody who says to me, we're looking to come to Israel, should we come? And I don't know, you have to come. Because you've never seen Am Yisrael like this, and you've never felt Am Yisrael like this. And you literally meet somebody and you literally feel like they're family in 2 minutes. And they're from Argentina. And you don't know anything about them, and they barely speak your language. But you're exactly the same. You're like part of the same family. You are working towards the same goals. You love the same things. And it's palpable.
As we finish our conversation, what is giving you hope today?
The people of Israel are giving me hope today. We know we're not going anywhere. God promised us that we're not going anywhere. And so we need to just keep doing what we're doing and showing up and being there for each other. And I think it's a very special time in Jewish history. I feel like there's a connection between the Jews of today, even in every other country. And I think that the unity is global. I feel like every Jew in the world just wants to be in Israel and just wants to help the people of Israel and just wants to, send money to the Chayalim and make them happy. You go to all these different places. This is another thing, actually, we didn't touch upon, funnily enough. But people always ask me, the kids are always writing letters. Like, should we still write the letters? And I can say that every single base that I have been to has like a wall where they have just thousands of children's letters. English, Spanish, French, God knows what. I even found actually some children's names that I recognized on some of the walls. In the Shuva Junction, which turned from a one-table place with cookies and coffee into basically like a store that soldiers literally can come in and get shampoo and conditioner and soap and socks and underwear and, food. They made tablecloths for the tables, and they're basically all the letters of the kids from all over the world. And you literally read them, and you'd think that this was, from a soldier's brother who sent him a letter. And they all say the same thing. And it's like, you're fighting for us, and we're supporting you, and we're praying for you, and we're thinking about you. And it's global. You feel the global Am Yisrael in Israel at the moment.
Rivkie, that is such a beautiful end to this episode. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you to Nomi Studios for hosting us, and thank you to all of you for listening today. We will be back with more episodes of the Homefront podcast soon, so make sure to follow us on social media for updates. Thank you for being here.